Hi everyone, today let's talk about PPI data, then we'll talk about the earnings reports coming up tomorrow morning, then we'll get into the charts, then we'll take a look at my abysmal results and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So getting started with the PPI data, we talked about it a little bit this morning, but it came in much better than expectations. You can see we were down to 2.7% from the revised upward previous read here at 4.9. Month-over-month basis went down 0.5%. This was mostly driven by falling good prices as well as energy prices. Prices for fresh food and vegetables also fell down a little bit, as did services. But light motor trucks, chicken, eggs, and other meats did go higher. They mention here it's good news to see inflation coming off of the boil. Core PPI declined 0.1%, which is up 0.34% from the previously revised up read of 0.8%. Overall, things continue to go in the right direction, which is good compared to what we saw from CPI on Wednesday. Moving over to the earnings calendar for tomorrow, we have United Health, huge company, JP Morgan Chase, definitely interested to see how these banks are doing. Wells Fargo up tomorrow morning as well. BlackRock, always interesting. Citigroup, as well as First Republic Bank. They don't mention here if that's in the morning or the afternoon, but all of these other big players are pre-market. So we'll see how all of that plays out, and then we'll have a whole day of trading to see how the markets digest that data. And then rolling right into Monday here, we have Charles Schwab, again, pre-market there. And then going to Tuesday, we have Johnson & Johnson, pre-market, Bank of America, Netflix, after hours, Lockheed Martin, pre-market, Goldman Sachs, pre-market, and then a couple of other banks as well as United Airlines, after hours here. So big earnings starts tomorrow, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how much earnings have declined this quarter. Moving over to the charts here, starting off with the S&P 500. On the 15 and the daily chart, you can see huge move today, basically straight up. What a ridiculous rally. Engulfed the entire previous day's candle and ended up closing higher than yesterday's. So much higher finish, very strong on the day. You can see we ran out of momentum at the end of the day, which is interesting. Huge volume candle at the end of the day as well. Last 15-minute candle up at 1.8 million in terms of volume. So tons of volume there, and that was a bearish candle, so it's worth paying attention to right at the end of the day. I actually want to maximize this daily chart here because this is some pretty tough price action, right? So we were in this channel going from October all the way up until mid-February, tested that low and then broke down. We then had a new channel, which ended up being pretty bullish. And now we're retesting this range that I was watching going back from the lows of October, encapsulated this low from December, and then the range that we had here in March and February. And since then, we were watching for the still top bearish going into today. And then we got that PPI data. And we jumped right above this support line, and now we're back into resistance. Definitely multiple levels of resistance going back to these previous highs from the beginning of February into mid-February before we had that breakdown. And right now, you have to look at this like it was bullish. So I went into the day definitely bearish. Momentum was moving lower. I was getting close to the SMA. Big volume yesterday. You can see not nearly as much volume today, which is interesting. But momentum kicking back into bullish territory. If this continues to break out, we're looking to see if we can get above that 414.96 level. And then if we can get above there, there's quite a bit of room to the upside to the next major trend, all the way up at around 423 to about 425.50. So just to give that a range, you can see quite a bit of upside if we can get through this major resistance that we have here. But like I said, these trend lines are very powerful. We've been watching them for a long time. That was where we got rejected last time. So we need to break, clean move through, and then we can look for a bigger push higher. But right now, it does seem like we're in an area where we definitely could see a reversal. And this would potentially be a fake out after the bearish move that we saw yesterday. Moving over to the NASDAQ here on the 15 and the daily. On the daily chart, very similar premise, went straight up, hit resistance, huge volume on the last candle. You can see 1.19 million shares on that last candle. The low for the day was about 116,000. So huge volume right at the end of day, just about double the open at the close, which is interesting. Right at that 319.60 level, definitely something to watch. You can see we've been in this channel tested that low, and I thought we were going to break down here after the news yesterday. But then PPI came out after the gap up, and we rallied right into this area of highest volume. Definitely looks weak right at the close. But of course, you have to be careful after the rally that we had. Looking at the daily chart, slightly different thesis from the SPY because we are higher than that high going back to the beginning of February. We did have the same pullback, but then we made a higher high here. You can see that same flag type setup that we were looking at on the 15-minute chart. Testing those highs here, definitely multiple levels of resistance to the upside that we do need to pay attention to. RSI right at that SMA. I was looking at this move yesterday where we had huge bearish momentum on RSI, and I expected this to follow through at least to the 50 line, but now we're retesting that SMA here, which is definitely interesting. If we reject from here, that's going to be very bearish, but if we can continue through and get a little bit of follow through up to about 321.82, that would be very bullish. And similar to the SPY, if we can get above this area of resistance up at 321.82, then I'm really looking at 327.30 or so as your next resistance. So major overhead resistance just above where we are, and then longer term resistance quite a bit higher than where we are. Also, it's worth noting, just like on the SPY volume yesterday, not a lot of volume here today, but that rally, like I said, was super aggressive. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. Russell showing a little bit more weakness here. Definitely rallied like everything else. Definitely got higher than yesterday's high, but we're still well below the highs from early April. We did not come up and retest that 179.17 level, which is where we wicked with the CPI report yesterday. Momentum is still bullish, and it does look like we're getting a bit of an upswing now after we got that bounce and follow through with the PPI report. Still looking at the 144 EMA at 179.31, just behind the level of resistance that I'm watching. If we came through there, then we have a move probably up to 181.71. That's what I'll be watching. If we do break down from 179.17, then I'll be looking back down to 177.31. So we'll see how that plays out. Still bullish here on the Russell, but it's interesting to see how much weaker the Russell looks compared to the NASDAQ and the SPY. Moving over to the Dow, you can see we broke out here, again, making higher highs. The Dow has looked strong pretty much throughout, continues to get supported by energy. Oil and gas have been strong, and really the entire energy sector. Overall momentum bullish, RSI bullish, but definitely in overbought conditions here. Moving over to Apple and Tesla on the 2-hour chart, highlighting this huge move that we had on Apple. Just like everything else, we were watching this bottom trend line in the 144 EMA. I was hoping this was going to break down, and we looked down to 157.79, but we held at this level and then rallied right up to resistance on this wedge that we've been watching. Overthrew it, looking to the low for the breakdown. We're now retesting the upper bound here. We'll see if this continues through and makes a higher high. That would break this channel. Otherwise, looking for that rejection, basically right where we are. You can see we're down a little bit after hours. Definitely interesting. Looking for that move down to about 162.84, 162.85. RSI starting to roll over a little bit here. Volume on the last candle of the day was pretty high as well. Overall, you want to say bearish, but you do have to be careful with how aggressive that move was here today. Looking at Tesla, quite the different thesis. We now have a low and a higher low setup. We rallied up to the 55 EMA here and then rejected at that level, which is now a lower high potentially. If we do get a pullback in the morning, we're going to have a high and a lower high setup. And then we're going to be in a wedge and we're going to have to wait for some clear direction. Overall, you can see we're still going sideways. We have a low, we have our high. We're pretty much in the middle of that range. Couldn't get above 188.50, couldn't get below 177.50. And like I said, we have to look for some clear direction. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish, but looking to see if this 55 EMA and 200 SMA is going to hold. Looking at Google and Meta here on the 2-hour. Meta, clear breakout above this consolidation. Definitely looks like it's going to go higher here. Alphabet, on the other hand, made a lower high potentially if this pulls back in tomorrow's session down to these EMAs at around 106.37. That would be interesting. Area of highest volume, 105.84. And then we have the lows from yesterday in the after hours sitting around 105. And then we have the high from Thursday sitting up around 108.80. So that's what we're looking at right now. For the range, likely to pull back in my opinion. Meta, on the other hand, still looks bullish and looks like it could go higher. Moving over to staples and discretionary on the hourly. Staples back above that line that we were watching. We watched it break down yesterday, moved lower and then rallied back above that level, back into these previous highs, still looking at 76 to the upside if we can hold above 75.40. Discretionary, on the other hand, is back in this area of supply, watching that 147 level. Didn't quite get there today. You can see this huge bearish volume on the last candle, which is a candle of indecision at the supply level. Definitely looks to me like this is going to go lower, so we have to be cautious. And just really look at that volume. You can see the last time we had that kind of volume was back on Friday, 31 March, and that was 341,000 units. And then on today's candle, 259,000 units, which is huge here for consumer discretionaries. And in my opinion, this is a selling candle. You can see the red candle, candle of indecision at resistance, and you would expect this to follow through to the downside, in my opinion. Moving over to transports on the hour and the 4 hour, you can see we had a clear double top, pulled back, found some support at the 200 SMA on the hourly chart, and then rallied back above this trend line. We are hitting that 21 EMA on the hourly chart, and we sold off from that level. If this breaks back down below here and follows through, that definitely looks very bearish. It's worth noting here that transports are not moving with the Dow at this point. The Dow made new highs, and the transports definitely look weak, even with the move higher that we saw here today. And I want to highlight how much lower we got in the pre-market, all the way down to 222.44 after the close at 224.04. So around $1.50 of downside on that after hours move, rallied back up, chopped out some shorts in my opinion. And then we're looking to see if this is going to pull back through area of highest volume, 223.75, 200 SMA, 222.31. And that correlates pretty well here, 222 at the 55 EMA on the 4 hour chart, along with that area of highest volume. Momentum, neutral on both. RSI, slightly bullish, but below the SMA on the 4 hour, and right at the 50 line here on the hourly chart. Moving over to semis, talked about this being a head and shoulders yesterday. So we have the left shoulder head, right shoulder, and this is still definitely viable. We're at the neckline yesterday after hours, found a little bit of rally, retesting the VWAP here along with the 21 EMA on the 4 hour chart. Definitely could move lower from here, definitely interesting. Momentum, still kind of neutral, moving in bullish territory. RSI, definitely neutral. Momentum on the hourly chart was pretty much bullish throughout the day. RSI looking across below the 50 line here tomorrow. You can see that sell-off that we had right at the end of the day. Not a ton of volume along with that, which is definitely interesting. The biggest volume candle that we saw was going back to the end of day on Tuesday, as well as the end of day here on Thursday. Both of those were bearish candles. And it's also definitely worth noting here that semiconductors, one of the strongest sector, did not make a new high today. The NASDAQ did. And if the NASDAQ is going higher without semiconductors, which has been carrying the NASDAQ here recently, it definitely seems like a little bit of a fake out. So definitely something to watch here. Semiconductors looking to roll over, but the NASDAQ still making new highs here in the short term. Moving over to the dollar here on the hour and the 12 hour, you can see we broke below that 101.25 level. And as soon as we did, we went much lower on the PPI report, pretty much went sideways throughout the day. But now we can see on the 12 hour making lower lows, getting close to oversold conditions. This trend continues to be pretty strong to the downside, and you have to continue to respect that. So in my opinion, this is what's allowing equities to go a little bit higher. The dollar looks weaker in the short term as we get ready for a Fed pause either in May or June, most likely in June. But as those interest rates start to cool down, it does seem like the dollar is going to sell off, at least over the next few months. Moving over to high yields here, similar thesis, rallied up, hit resistance, sold off into the close, tons of volume on the last hour. And I do want to highlight how much volume that was here. Looking at the daily chart, you can see that was 33.8 million units. Last time we saw numbers like that, we have to go all the way back to Friday, 28 October, where we saw 34 million units. Tons and tons of volume on this index right now. The average is closer to around 10 million. But like we said on the daily chart, 33.8 million units getting sold. In my opinion, you can see we're right at the highs here, right around triple what we've been seeing over the last few weeks. And the question is this a double top? Are we finally getting that exit? We're going to start to see this roll over. But if this follows through here tomorrow, then you really have to get on board just because of how much volume we're seeing here in the short term. Moving over to TLT, we've been watching this range for quite a while. We've been here since November of last year. It looks like getting a little bit of a double top and we're starting to pull back further. I really thought we would find support at the 200 SMA and we would get a bigger move up. Certainly still possible. We're just below it, but really we're breaking through a lot of these EMAs and SMAs as well as VWAP, sitting down at 105.99. If this continues lower, looking at the 55 EMA at 104.73, definitely interesting to see that move happening. Momentum moving into bearish territory. RSI definitely bearish. Looks like we're going to have some follow through at this point. Clear island reversal, but like I said, looking at the Wednesday candle, we had some support at the 200 SMA, but now we're moving back into that level, and it does seem like we're going to go lower in tomorrow's session. Moving over to the VIX on the hour and the weekly chart, you can see the hour we broke down below 1850, closed at 1781. This takes out all these previous lows that we've seen here recently. You can see this trend line that we have here on the weekly view. We've been watching this going all the way back to November of 2017, marked the lows in December of 19, marked multiple lows here in August of 21 and October of 21. And now here we are once again right at the trend line waiting to see what happens. If we continue lower, this rally might be legit and might have some follow through. But if this bounces from here, we're probably going to see a pretty violent move in my opinion. Momentum still moving in the bearish direction. RSI still bearish. So you do have to keep that in mind. But like I said, right at this trend support, and we'll see if this continues to hold like it has for the last several years. So moving over to my accounts here, you can see I have no positions on and I really got taken to the cleaners here for a little bit. I was short going into the day. I didn't think we were going to be that aggressive on the PPI data. And this was a clear example of me trading my thesis instead of me trading the markets. They went up straight all day, held the trend throughout, and I just didn't want to believe it. And that's really unfortunate. You can even see here the NASDAQ is down after hours quite a bit. About 50 cents here after hours. See how this plays out going into tomorrow's session. But I want to highlight here, you can see IV rank. This is implied volatility for options. IV rank currently is at a negative 3.2, which makes it pretty hard to make money here, which makes it pretty hard to make money with options, which is part of the reason that I'm not in any options right now. Volatility is extremely low, just like we saw on the VIX, which, like I said, makes it a little bit harder for me to sell options. Overall, my thesis is I think we're going to be topping. I still think we're going to be bearish, but you can't trade that here right now. It still looks bullish, so you have to be careful. Certainly can continue to go higher, and you need to trade the markets that you're given, not the markets you think you're going to get. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the PPI data. Is this rally going to hold? Is it going to spur new growth? Or is this just a fake out and we're going to get a bigger sell-off as we move into earnings season? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.